Have you ever wondered why the more patient you are, the more people seem to test you? Why the more you forgive, the more they push? It's not because you're weak, it's because somewhere along the way, your tolerance became mistaken for permission. The world doesn't respond to good intentions. It reacts to boundaries. And if yours are invisible, so is your worth. You've been told all your life to be the bigger person, to turn the other cheek, to let things slide. But deep down, you know something feels off. Each time you bite your tongue, each time you swallow that sting of disrespect, something inside you shrinks. A part of your dignity, your fire, your self-worth, it dims. And you start to wonder, maybe this is just the price of keeping the peace. But here's the truth no one told you. Peace built on self-abandonment isn't peace. It's quiet self-destruction. Disrespect doesn't always show up as loud insults. Sometimes it's a tone, a look, being talked over, being ignored, being made to feel like you're an option. And when you don't address it, when you tolerate it in silence, you reinforce the lie that you're okay with it. What you allow is what will continue. That's not just a cliche, it's a law of human behavior. People don't treat you how you deserve. They treat you how you allow. And when you allow too much, you become a target, not a treasure. There's a cost to every unchecked moment. Every time you stay silent, they learn they can get away with it. Every time you let it slide, they slide further. And over time, you become the person who's easy to deal with, not because you're kind, but because you never push back. And while you think you're maintaining harmony, you're actually teaching people that your comfort is negotiable, that your time is expendable, that your presence is not a privilege, but a guarantee. That's how respect dies, quietly, slowly, with every compromise you never meant to make. But here's the power in all of this. It can stop today. The moment you decide that your peace is not up for discussion, that your worth doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't explain. You can't control how people treat you, but you can control what you stay around for. And when you raise your standards, you force the world to rise or fall away. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. So stay with me, because this isn't about turning bitter. It's about getting clear. It's about drawing the line between being generous and being taken for granted, between being humble and being walked on. And when you truly understand that difference, when you stop tolerating even the smallest form of disrespect, everything shifts. People feel it. Your energy changes. Your silence becomes a statement. And you become someone the world doesn't just see, they respect, not because you demanded it, but because you became someone who no longer accepted anything less. When you stop tolerating disrespect, something powerful happens inside you. You begin to see yourself clearly for the first time. Not as the version that settled, compromised, or stayed silent to keep others comfortable, but as the version that demands more simply by existing with certainty. You realize that every time you let someone cross a line, it wasn't just about them. It was about you lowering your own bar. Not because you didn't care, but because deep down you questioned whether you deserved better. That ends now. Respect doesn't come from others first. It's born from the way you talk to yourself, the way you carry your pain, the way you hold your own voice like it matters. When you accept what dishonors you, you teach your mind that your comfort can be negotiated, and your subconscious obeys. It stops fighting for you. It normalizes the disrespect. And before long, you're not even shocked when someone talks down to you or makes you feel small. You expect it. And that quiet expectation, that dangerous acceptance, is what keeps you locked in place. Disrespect doesn't always roar. Sometimes it comes disguised as jokes that go too far, promises never kept, inconsistencies brushed off. And you convince yourself it's not worth addressing. You tell yourself they didn't mean it, that you're being too sensitive. But every excuse you make for someone else's behavior is a direct insult to your own worth. You think you're keeping the peace, but really, you're at war with yourself. And the longer you ignore that war, the more it destroys what's sacred inside you. The truth is, most people will treat you exactly how you treat yourself. If you show the world that you're okay being overlooked, underestimated, or mishandled, they'll take that as the rule, not the exception. If you show them that your standards have no weight, they'll walk right through them. But when you begin to rise, when you stop explaining, stop excusing, stop begging to be seen, you become a mirror. You reflect back to others how they are allowed to treat you, and they respond instantly. Every time you stand your ground, you reinforce the message. I'm not someone you can disrespect without consequence. Not with aggression, but with calm, grounded certainty. With silence when needed, with distance when necessary, with dignity that doesn't bend for crumbs. That's where real transformation begins. Not in forcing others to change, but in no longer abandoning yourself to keep them close. And if that means walking alone for a while, let it be. If that means fewer calls, fewer invitations, fewer nods of approval, let them fall away. Because what's left, what remains after the storm, is the version of you that no longer negotiates their value. And from that version, everything changes. People don't just hear your boundaries, they feel them. They respect them. Not because you begged for better, but because you became better. And that changes the entire equation. Respect is not something you earn by being agreeable. It's something you command by drawing the line no one is allowed to cross. The people who walk through life with quiet authority, with presence that shifts the room, don't get there by chance. They get there by deciding what's beneath them and refusing to tolerate it ever again. There's nothing arrogant about holding standards. There's nothing rude about protecting your energy. There's nothing selfish about refusing to entertain anyone who tries to chip away at your dignity. That's not ego. That's alignment with your worth. You don't rise by being soft when the moment calls for strength. You rise by sending a signal that you are not someone to test, not someone who will fold to guilt or fear or manipulation. The world listens to what you tolerate. It calculates how far it can push you based on how little you push back. The moment you stop entertaining disrespect, the room shifts. The tone changes. People begin to speak more carefully, not because you said a word, but because your silence is no longer passive. It's powerful. There is nothing more intimidating than a person who no longer flinches at the thought of being misunderstood, who no longer needs to defend their stance, who can sit in discomfort, in solitude, in silence without breaking. That kind of presence is magnetic. It doesn't chase validation. It doesn't seek agreement, it doesn't lower itself for approval, and it doesn't explain itself to anyone who hasn't earned the right to ask. Disrespect often shows up as small tests. Will you laugh at the joke that cuts too deep? Will you pretend not to notice when your time is wasted? Will you keep showing up for those who show you you're replaceable? Every test you pass by staying silent is a message sent. You can keep doing this. I won't stop you. And they won't. Until you do. When you draw the line, truly draw the line, truly draw it, you will lose things. You may lose approval. You may lose access. You may lose people. But what you gain in return is not just self-respect, it's personal power. It's the unshakable knowing that you're no longer available for anything that costs your peace. And once you taste that, you never go back. You become too solid to bend, too grounded to chase, too aware to be fooled. Power doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to punish. It doesn't need to prove anything. It simply exists and dares the world to rise to its level or be left behind. That's what happens when you stop tolerating disrespect. You become the storm they never saw coming. Not loud, not reckless, but undeniable, unshakable. Unavailable for anything less than what you finally decided you're worth. And that decision changes everything. The most dangerous habit you can develop is trying to be liked by everyone. Because in that pursuit, you start erasing parts of yourself just to fit what others want you to be. You water down your truth. You laugh when it's not funny. You stay when you should walk. And every time you do, you lose a piece of yourself to please someone who wouldn't flinch to disrespect you again. There is nothing noble about self-betrayal. There is nothing heroic about being easy to deal with at the cost of your own dignity. You were not built to be a doormat. You were not born to be constantly accommodating, endlessly forgiving, or always available. That's not kindness. That's fear disguised as virtue. Fear of confrontation, fear of rejection, fear of being alone. But that fear is lying to you. It says that if you take up too much space, you'll be abandoned. If you set a boundary, you'll be punished. If you stop being overly generous with your time, your silence, your energy, people will walk away. Let them. Because the ones who leave when you finally respect yourself are the very ones who benefited from your lack of self-respect. Trying to avoid discomfort by staying silent is a slow form of self-destruction. You may win temporary approval, but you lose permanent peace. You teach your nervous system to shrink when you should stand. You train your voice to whisper when it should command. And before you know it, you've become someone you don't even recognize, tamed, timid, and tired of being overlooked. But the moment you stop prioritizing being liked and start prioritizing being respected, everything changes. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You show up less, but your presence means more. You give less of yourself, but what you give is felt deeply. Because now it's real. Now it's from a place of power, not performance. You are no longer afraid of being misunderstood, misjudged, or misrepresented. You are no longer afraid of walking away, of saying no, of disappointing those who only stayed close because they could control you. You were never too much. You were just too silent about what you needed. And now, that silence ends. You don't have to scream. You don't have to fight. You just have to decide. Decide that your peace is not up for negotiation. Decide that your presence is not automatic. Decide that the price of your respect will never be discounted again. Let go of the need to explain why you deserve better. Let your energy speak for you. Let your boundaries speak louder than your words ever could. The moment you stop chasing comfort in others is the moment you find power within yourself. And when you find that power, they either rise to meet it or fall away. Either way, you win. Because now you are done performing, you are done pleasing, and finally, you are becoming. The moment you stop tolerating disrespect is the moment you stop negotiating with fear. Fear of being alone, fear of being disliked, fear of being too much. But the truth is, none of that fear ever protected you. It only made you small. It made you shrink your voice to keep the peace. It made you say yes when everything in your soul was screaming no. It made you tolerate what broke you just to avoid breaking the image others had of you. That fear became the leash that kept your power caged. But cages don't protect, they suffocate. Every time you allow someone to dismiss your value, you chip away at your own self-image. You look in the mirror and question your strength. You replay conversations and wonder why you didn't speak up. You stay silent not because you're weak, but because you've been conditioned to believe that strength is rude, that truth is harsh, that boundaries make you difficult. But boundaries don't make you difficult, they make you real. And being real in a world addicted to convenience will always be misunderstood by those who profit from your silence. You were not born to make everyone comfortable. You were born to be whole. And wholeness means honoring what makes you feel seen, respected, safe, and sovereign. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. Because when you stop tolerating disrespect, you stop betraying yourself. You stop dimming your brilliance to fit into spaces that were never built for you. You stop entertaining conversations that drain you. Not getting okay with crumbs when your soul knows it was built for more. You teach people how to treat you every single day by what you allow, what you tolerate, what you let slide without correction. And every time you let something slide, you set a new standard. That your comfort is optional, that your time is disposable, that your emotions don't matter. But when you shift that, when you raise the cost of access to your energy, you change the way people move around you. Not because they've changed, but because you have. Your silence used to be a way of keeping the peace. Now it becomes a boundary. Your distance used to be avoidance. Now it becomes protection. Your no used to come with guilt. Now it comes with certainty. That's the transformation. That's what happens when you stop needing to be liked and start needing to be respected by others, yes, but more importantly, by yourself. Because when you respect yourself, you don't tolerate what harms you. You don't justify what drains you. You don't explain your worth. You embody it. This isn't about revenge. It's about revelation. You are not who you were when you accepted less. You are becoming the version of yourself who finally understands. Respect isn't given to the loudest voice or the softest heart. It's given to the one who no longer flinches, no longer folds, and no longer fears being alone with their own power. Most people will only treat you as well as they have to. The moment they realize there are no consequences for their behavior, they'll push the boundary further. They'll test your silence. They'll interpret your tolerance as weakness. And slowly, almost without noticing, you'll find yourself justifying the bare minimum. You'll tell yourself, at least they didn't do worse. But since when did you start measuring your worth against the absence of mistreatment instead of the presence of real respect? That shift in thinking is where you begin to lose yourself. Disrespect doesn't just hurt because of what's done to you. It hurts because of what it makes you question about yourself. It makes you wonder why you're not enough to be valued, why you're always the one compromising, why you feel like you're giving more than you're receiving. That quiet self-doubt grows like poison, and it's not because you're weak. It's because your standards have been quietly lowered to match the energy around you. You've been taught to absorb instead of confront, to endure instead of demand, to adapt instead of decide. But what if you stopped adapting? What if you stopped bending yourself to accommodate what you've outgrown? The power you're seeking isn't in proving your worth to people who overlook you. It's in realizing that their approval is irrelevant, that you don't need to win them over. You need to win yourself back. You need to stand so firm in who you are that disrespect feels foreign, unwelcome, unnatural, completely incompatible with your presence. Because when that's your energy, people can feel it, and they either elevate or exit. There's a reason people respect what's rare, what's protected, what's selective with its energy. You teach the world how to approach you by how you show up for yourself. For yourself. If you allow casual disrespect, you become easy to disregard. But when you radiate self-respect, you become untouchable. Not because you're aggressive, but because you are grounded, solid, clear. You don't need to threaten. You don't need to raise your voice. You simply choose where your attention goes and where it never returns. Every time you say nothing when something should be said, you're not keeping the peace. You're delaying the war inside. And that internal war doesn't end until you stop tolerating what dishonors your soul. Until you stop seeking harmony with people who benefit from your silence. Until you realize that not everyone deserves a seat at your table and not every interaction deserves your energy. You were never meant to be walked over just because you're capable of staying quiet. Your strength isn't in how much you can take. It's in how clearly you can draw the line that says, this is where it ends. From this point forward, no more shrinking. No more second chances for repeated offenses. No more tolerating what tears you down. The respect you want begins with the standard you uphold. And once you raise it, everything around you has no choice but to rise or be removed. You were not created to be someone else's emotional cushion, ego booster, or silent punching bag. The more you tolerate what disrespects your spirit, the more you become a shadow of the person you were meant to be. You begin to walk through life questioning your value, doubting your instincts, second-guessing your decisions, and explaining yourself to people who don't even deserve access to your presence. But this ends when you decide it ends. When you stop waiting for someone to treat you better and start treating yourself as if you already are. You don't need to be cruel to be clear. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to be defensive to be firm. The real shift happens the moment you realize your power lies in your presence, your ability to choose who gets to stay, who gets to speak, and who gets to be dismissed from your life without drama or apology. That choice is yours. It always was. You just forgot because for too long you believed your worth was measured by your ability to be patient with those who kept you waiting. Your value is not defined by your tolerance for mistreatment. It's defined by the limits you set and the silence you walk away with. Disrespect thrives when you give it space, when you rationalize it, when you cushion it with excuses. They're just going through something. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. At least they're still around. But why are you holding space for people who consistently dishonor your boundaries? Why are you bending yourself into confusion just to keep others comfortable? That mental fog you feel, that heaviness, that resentment, that fatigue, is your soul trying to get your attention. It's telling you that your peace is not being protected. And if you don't protect it, no one else will. The most powerful version of you is not the one who pleases the most people. It's the one who pleases themselves enough to say, this is not okay. The one who says no without a paragraph. The one who walks away without explaining why. The one who can sit with their own decision and feel peace, not guilt. Because peace isn't found in approval. It's found in alignment. And alignment requires courage. Courage to lose what's familiar. Courage to stand alone for a season. Courage to be misunderstood by those who never truly saw you. You don't rise by being tolerated, you rise by becoming unavailable for anything that contradicts your value. That includes fake respect, conditional kindness, and people who only show up when it benefits them. You don't need to raise your standards later. You need to remember who you are now. Stop trying to be palatable to those who are allergic to your power. Stop making space for people who would never do the same for you. You weren't made to be tolerated. You were made to be respected. And from this moment forward, that's the only energy you accept. There is a version of you waiting to be born the moment you decide you've had enough. Not the version that tolerates to avoid tension, not the version that smiles to keep the peace. Not the version that swallows their truth just to maintain appearances. The real you is hidden beneath layers of compromise, layers built over years of shrinking, adapting, and surrendering to people who mistook your kindness for weakness. That version, the one you've silenced to survive, doesn't need permission to rise. It needs a decision. A decision to stop betraying yourself just to keep relationships alive that don't feed your soul. Respect isn't something you beg for. It's something you command by the way you move, speak, and remove yourself. When you show people that your boundaries are flexible, they will stretch them until they snap. When you prove that your forgiveness is endless, they will hurt you repeatedly and ask for understanding. But when you change, when you say no and mean it, when you walk away and don't look back, when you stop explaining your standards, they feel the shift, not because you told them. Because they can't reach you anymore. You're no longer available for disrespect dressed as loyalty. You're no longer seduced by potential that never becomes action. It's not your job to train someone to value you. That's not your burden to carry. Your only job is to show up for yourself so clearly, so unapologetically, that anyone who doesn't align with your energy naturally exits your life. Let the ones who are only loyal when it's easy fall away. Let the ones who only show respect when they're losing access watch the door close. That is not loss. That is alignment. That is your life clearing out the noise to make room for truth. When you stop tolerating disrespect, you begin to create space for what's real. Real respect, real care, real peace. The kind that doesn't need to be chased, explained, or earned. It's not about how long someone has known you or how much you've been through. It's about how they show up when it counts. Words are easy. Presence is truth, and consistency is everything. You deserve people who don't need to be reminded how to treat you. You deserve environments where your boundaries are honored without negotiation. There's no pride in suffering silently. There's no strength in absorbing pain to prove you're loyal. Loyalty that comes at the cost of your self-respect is self-destruction disguised as virtue. And you've already bled enough trying to be enough for those who never intended to grow with you. That chapter ends when you say it does. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with truth. The truth that your peace is priceless, the truth that your energy is sacred, and the truth that the highest form of love is self-respect. When you stand in that truth, the world either adjusts or gets left behind. When you reclaim your self-respect, you stop asking questions that were never yours to carry. You no longer ask, "Oh, why won't they treat me right?" Or, "What more do I need to do?" Because you finally understand it was never about your effort, your kindness, or your worth. It was about what you allowed to continue. The moment you recognize that truth, your entire energy shifts. You stop trying to fix what only survives through your silence. You stop participating in dynamics that drain you. You stop confusing your capacity to endure pain with a reason to stay in it. And most importantly, you stop believing that being needed is the same as being valued. There's a quiet, unshakable confidence that rises when you decide to stop tolerating anything beneath a standard of respect. You no longer flinch at silence. You no longer chase half-hearted apologies. You no longer overextend yourself to keep people comfortable while you slowly suffocate. That old version of you, the one who feared being misunderstood, who held back to be liked, who kept explaining themselves to those committed to not hearing, starts to dissolve. And in its place rises someone unmovable. Someone who knows their time, energy, and presence are not to be given to those who don't honor them. You don't notice when you change. Not because you tell them, but because you become unreachable to the patterns they once exploited. Your calm becomes more powerful than your explanations. Your absence becomes louder than any confrontation. You stop showing up in places that left you empty. You stop being emotionally available to those who only returned when they felt you slipping away. And they feel the difference, not in anger, but in the unapologetic peace that now surrounds you. That peace is the reward of finally choosing yourself. You are not here to be a mirror for other people's insecurities. You are not a sponge for their chaos, nor a container for their unresolved wounds. You are not obligated to keep teaching people how to treat you while they keep failing the lesson the less. Sports. There's nothing noble about being the bigger person when it only makes you smaller. There's nothing loving about forgiving what continues to break you. True love begins when you learn to draw a line and keep it sharp. Not because you hate them, but because you finally love you. Respect is not a request. It's a requirement. And the only way to teach it is through action. No more warnings. No more repeated explanations. No more soft landings for those who keep crashing into your boundaries. When you rise, don't look back. When you walk, walk firm. Because the energy you carry now isn't wounded. It's awakened. You've remembered what you forgot under the weight of keeping the peace. Your voice matters. Your boundaries matter. Your energy matters. And the more you protect them, the more you become someone no one dares to disrespect.